As we age, we must face the deaths of family and friends. Tonight on The Best Times, we discuss ways of coping with grief and loss. We'll spend the afternoon with Bentley the therapy dog. And we'll ask you, have you had your shots? Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. It's a sad fact that in the second half of our lives, we experience more losses: parents, a spouse, family, and friends. In her book, Lots of Candles, Plenty of Cake, author Anna Quindlen asks Meryl Streep, what's the hardest part of getting older? Her answer? Losing friends. Coping with death is never easy, but older adults are more vulnerable to the stress and life changes that come with loss. Counselors tell us that we should embrace our grieving, but that is often easier said than done. Tonight, we examine ways of coping with grief and loss. We all know that death is an inevitability, but is grief inevitable?
Yeah, it really is. You know, everybody grieves. I often tell people that there's two absolutes in dealing with grief. Either you deal with grief or grief will deal with you.
Well, let's talk about dealing with grief, because, you know, as we enter the second half of our lives, we, I guess, mathematically face more loss. Loss of a spouse, loss of the friends that we've had over the years. So what's the proper way to cope with that grief? How do we deal with it?
Well, certainly knowing it's coming and kind of bracing yourself for it is one way, and to keep it in perspective, that it is an inevitable part of life, is death, and that the grief you will experience is normal. So keeping it in perspective and kind of preparing yourself for it without being maudlin and being totally immersed in it, but knowing that it will be coming for you eventually, and that it's just the way it is.
The point you made there, I mean, does the fact that the death of someone close to us, does it making us think of our own mortality, does that play a role in grief?
One of the things that we see at Methodist Hospice is the opportunity for anticipatory grief to happen, that you get the opportunity to say the things you want to say, to do the things you may want to do before that person passes away. So it can actually be a good thing and not a bad thing.
To help ease your own grief.
To help ease your own grief. And one of the things, you know, as staff, what we do is we give them the opportunity. We've been a part of seeing people have a one last anniversary together. We've had a patient one time who had their very first birthday. I think the gentleman was 78, I can't remember, but around that was his very first birthday ever. So it's an opportunity to have those last wishes fulfilled, those last opportunities to say what need to be said while you're dealing with the grief, both the patient and the family.
Is the death of a spouse the hardest grief to overcome?
According to all the statistical charts, it appears to be. If you can put a degree on grief.
Right.
Certainly someone who's been in a very long-term unhappy marriage, when their spouse dies, maybe there's a sense of relief. But that same person may have had a good, close friend for many, many years, and when that friend dies, that grief could be maybe stronger in degree, if you can put degrees on grief.
You know, very often though, as far as the loss of a spouse, when you do experience other losses, your go-to person, your main support when you're dealing with a healthy, strong marriage is your spouse. They're the ones to help you through other losses. And when your spouse dies, then that main support has died as well.
Well, let's talk about that support, because I'm curious about what I will call the non-death related loss of a spouse. It might be a loss of financial security or a loss of mutual friends who don't, you're not couples anymore. I mean, is that a part of the grief process?
Certainly, like the couple idea, if maybe you're in a dinner group together and one of the spouses dies, does that single person remain in the dinner group with all the other couples? Or, who gets custody of the friends, after it is a very complex issue, and brings on all new problem-solving dilemmas that you may not have even thought of in the past. But certainly points out the need for a very strong support group, good friends who are going to stick with you no matter what the circumstances.
Is grief harder as we get older?
It can be more challenging in the sense that because grief is not just about how it affects us emotionally, grief affects us physically, mentally, spiritually, behaviorally, and emotionally. And any of those one areas can be more challenging. We start having more physical problems perhaps the second half of our lives. And so it can be more challenging as we get older, except that we also, as we get older, become more resigned and more comfortable with grief as well, because we have more losses the older we get.
We have the experience to draw from.
And we have the experience to draw from, exactly.
Let's talk about a few myths and maybe debunk some myths. First of all, the myth that grief has a timeline. In other words, a couple of months, you'll be over the loss of the spouse or the friend.
Well, many people think that's true, and certainly the initial shock and the difficult first few weeks or months are pretty acute. But after that, people heal at their own pace and deal with death based on their own coping skills. I had a friend once whose husband died from suicide, and it was a tragic, horrible death of a young man. And 2 weeks after the funeral, she went to a grief support group. And she found within 2 weeks, she had already moved way beyond the point many of the people in the group who had been attending for years were at. So I thought that spoke so vividly of how all of us deal at it at our own pace. The timeline we have is our timeline, not one that is set by an article in a book or a magazine.
Whether it's months or even years, again, it goes back to either there's two absolutes: either we deal with the grief or the grief deals with us. And one thing I tell clients when I'm meeting with them as a grief counselor is that there's nothing also magical about day 366. So many times people say, let me just get through the first and then I'll be okay. There's nothing either magical about day 366 either.
Myth number 2, staying busy will keep the pain away. If I just absorb myself in my work or whatever, then the grief will go away. Is that true?
I think staying busy is a great coping skill, and it can keep you busy, but it may not make the grief go away. The grief will be there until you process it, until you deal with those feelings and work them through in your own mind.
Myth number 3, if I cry, it's a sign of weakness.
Oh, goodness, no.
Absolutely not.
Some people, particularly men, are raised with that idea that you have to be stalwart and it's unmanly to cry, and that's ridiculous. It's human nature to cry when you're sad, and it's a very cleansing and renewing experience.
Absolutely.
Point number 4, myth number 4, is similar to number 1 in a sense. It says there are definite stages to grief that you have to go through. And of course, this comes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's famous book on death and dying. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. 5 stages, and you got to go through them.
Absolutely not. And actually, those stages were never meant to be set stages. They were meant to be a part of better understanding grief. And it's not a set stage. You may deal with some denial and anger at first and think you're all of a sudden at a place of acceptance, when all of a sudden you're 3 steps backwards and back into the anger stage. Some people never even deal with anger. Everybody has their own journey or grief they have to take. What's important is that they take that journey.
Last on the myth list is grief should be experienced alone. I know you're going to bust this one.
Absolutely. Grief is about having support. Grief is about having those people that can walk alongside you in the journey of grief, whether it's from the side of anticipatory grief, and having people with you while you might be expecting the grief when you're dealing with someone that's been diagnosed with a terminal diagnosis, or it's after the person has passed away, and having your support system there to help with the little things and the big things.
Well, let's talk about that support, because what role does a grief counselor, a grief support group play?
Well, I think a grief counselor, certainly at the very beginning, is somebody who will just listen, who will be there and who will let you repeat the story about the illness and the funeral 10 times if you need to. And that's counselor or support person will just be there and listen, non-judgmentally and with acceptance. And then from that point, to be somewhat of a mentor, to help that person move through the stages or start to confront the grief and start to begin to process it at whatever pace they are comfortable with.
You know, and often what I tell people is my role is to help normalize the grief, to help them better understand the grief. People sometimes are overwhelmed with the fact that they said, I just can't focus, I just can't remember. I'm having all these physical problems as well. And what my role is being able to help people normalize the grief and realize they're not dealing with grief and all these other problems. All these other problems are part of grief. And that helps them realize, at least I'm not falling completely apart.
Let me close out with your best advice in dealing with grief and loss.
Well, I certainly think realize what you're going through is a miserable, horrible, difficult experience, but what you're feeling is normal. And when you realize to cry or to feel sad for months, or maybe have some trouble sleeping and adjusting to the new normal is normal. It's a process, and you're going through it, and you can only go through it at your own pace. There's a Christmas carol, and I don't even know which one it is. It says, through the years we all will be together if the fates allow. Until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. And I think that muddling through thing is some days you just muddle through and get through one more day.
I think my best grief, you know, we, especially here in the South, you know, we have that, you know, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And what I always encourage people when they're going through grief, give the other people in your lives the blessing of giving to you. So when you're going through grief, it's your season to receive, and don't steal the blessings of people giving to you. Whether it's bringing meals, sitting with you, crying with you, whatever that may be, don't steal the joy and the blessing of other people giving to you during your season of grief, because there'll be a time when you'll be able to give to others during their season of grief.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on The Best Times, talking about grief and loss.
Thanks.
For more information, go to the website of helpguide.org. You can select from a number of topics, including grief and loss. To find a local grief support group, go to griefshare.org and search for your area. There are about 70 to 80 million dogs in America that live in our households as pets. We make them a part of our families, and we wouldn't part with them for any reason. But sadly, the day you enter a nursing home or an assisted living center is the day you have to leave your beloved pet behind. Fortunately, these facilities have realized the therapeutic benefit that animals can provide, and organizations like Mid-South Therapy Dogs and Friends brings animals and their handlers into dozens of retirement facilities across the area. And today is Bentley's Day Out. On a Wednesday morning, Bentley and his handler, D.D. Davis, are walking down the hallway of the assisted living unit at the Village at Germantown. They're going to pay a visit to some of Bentley's admiring fans.
When a dog walks in, the environment changes. There's just something about that connection. It instantly brings smiles to everybody's faces every single time we do it.
Bentley has been bringing smiles to faces for about a year now as one of the therapy teams at Mid-South Therapy Dogs and Friends, a volunteer organization devoted to providing animal-assisted therapy to facilities ranging from nursing homes and assisted living facilities to schools and hospitals. The benefits of therapy animals are so tangible that they're often referred to as furry physicians.
The people that interact with animals, it's been shown that their heart rate drops, their blood pressure drops. The animals are just not judgmental at all, and so it's that unconditional love that they provide during their visit that just makes somebody have a smile on their face.
It also gives our clients that we interact with a sense of hope and a sense of normal. There have been many studies that do show that the power of the animal bond with the human does speed up the healing process.
Animals and their handlers are required to go through a training period lasting an average of 6 months. Basic obedience skills are mandatory, and special emphasis is given to interacting with large groups and dealing with foreign environments, such as hospitals.
Really, it takes a dog that's trainable, and it also takes a dog that has the right temperament, which would be calm, a dog that is obedient, a dog that is dependable and predictable. Dogs can be taught, but it also is teaching the other end of the leash, which would be me, the handler.
After training is complete, animals and handlers must pass an evaluation before being certified to work as therapy teams. It is a considerable investment of time and money on the part of the animals and their owners, but the rewards are worth it.
Bentley is a very good therapy animal because he loves his job. He knows that he's working. He gets into the work mode very easily. He interacts really well with our clients. He's calm, he's predictable, he's very dependable, and he was easy to train. He loves what he does.
It's easy to see the smiles on faces and understand what people get from a visit by therapy animals. But what about the animals themselves?
He enjoys the visits. He loves the connection with people. As you saw, he kept offering his hand to the residents here. He loves the connection. He looks forward to it. When I get his little bandana out, he gets very excited. He can't wait to get in the car and go on visits. So definitely, he gets a lot out of it because he likes to make people smile.
Anyone who has ever owned a pet of any kind has experienced the invisible bond that exists between animals and humans. Medical science may be able to quantify this interaction by measuring blood pressure and stress levels, but it will never be able to measure the value of the smiles, the memories, and the way soft fur feels on the palm of your hand.
I think that animals give us something that we long for within ourselves. I feel like the connection with our animals it's magical. If you've ever owned an animal, you know it. They're part of your family. And I believe when our clients interact with our animal, be it a dog, a llama, or our donkeys, there's just a feedback that they can't get from another human. It's unconditional love, and it's non-judgmental. And I think that that is really the positive energy behind that bond. Not all medicine comes in a bottle, and Bentley is a great example of that.
When we were children, we got vaccinated on a regular basis, and our parents kept an accurate record of our vaccinations. But as adults, and particularly older adults, we haven't done a very good job of getting the vaccinations we need to protect ourselves. Which is why this next segment asks the question, have you had your shots? Are we getting our vaccinations?
No, not all. I looked up a statistic for you on the CDC's website that showed only about 33% of adults in Tennessee are getting their full set of adult vaccines. According to another website, this wasn't from the CDC, but Tennessee ranked about 30th in the country for their adult immunization rate, so we're not doing very well.
How important are vaccinations?
In 2 words, very important. Vaccines are important for everybody, but especially for older adults, especially if you've developed chronic medical conditions throughout your lifetime, then certain infectious diseases can be even more risky for you. So it's very important to get your vaccines not only to prevent illness for yourself, prevent hospitalizations, but also to prevent spreading diseases to other members of the community who cannot be vaccinated.
What vaccinations should I get?
Every year, every adult should be getting the flu vaccine. The tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis vaccine is important to get a booster if you've never had one since childhood, and then every 10 years to make sure you get your TD booster, which is tetanus and diphtheria. If you're taking care of young children, it's also important to get updated every 10 years on your pertussis vaccine. For the pneumonia vaccine, that's for adults 65 and older. Unless you have certain medical conditions, then you need it earlier. And the varicella or shingles vaccine is age 60 and up. And then also, if you have certain medical conditions, making sure you're up to date on your hepatitis B series is important.
How effective is the flu shot?
The flu strains vary from year to year. Some people might say, well, I got the flu shot last year, but I still got the flu. Each year when they make the flu vaccine, they're predicting what are going to be the most prevalent strains that year. So it's not always 100%. In some years we get great vaccines, and some years they're not as great. And so I think since the flu virus can change over the flu season and over the years, people feel like they don't trust it as much. But it is important to get it, because if you do get the flu, it's not like the common cold. A lot of people mix up the flu and the common cold and said, oh, I got it anyway. The flu is a very serious illness. People can be hospitalized, have to have a tube to breathe, be put on a ventilator if they get really sick from the flu. So it's not worth taking the chance.
Who should get the pneumonia vaccine?
That's a very effective vaccine. We recommend only, just there's 2 shots in the series for adults 65 and older. And it's very effective at helping to prevent pneumonia in older adults. Children get the pneumonia vaccines when they're young, but the immunity can wane over time. And then with the chronic conditions developed by older adults, weakened immune system, the pneumonia vaccine is very effective in helping to prevent pneumonia in the older years.
What is shingles?
Shingles is a painful rash that occurs over a swath of someone's body. Usually we see it on the trunk, sometimes on the face. And it is caused by the chickenpox virus, varicella. And when you get shingles, it's a reactivation of the virus. It never completely goes away from your body. It lays dormant in the nerves, which is a little scary to think about, and can come out at times of stress or when your immune system is down.
If I never had chickenpox, can I get shingles?
Not necessarily, because some people have very mild cases of chickenpox and don't know that they ever had it. And so the CDC recommendation is, whether you had chickenpox or not as a child, just go ahead and get your shingles vaccine.
Are there risk factors for vaccinations?
For the flu shot and the tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis shots, there really are no certain risk factors. We recommend everyone stays on the same schedule. But for the pneumococcal vaccine, the pneumonia vaccine, it's recommended 65 and up, but for adults with chronic medical conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, liver disease, kidney disease, certain cancers, certain immune suppressive illnesses like HIV, we recommend that they get their vaccines before age 65. And then same with hepatitis B. Children are being immunized standardly now, but a lot of older adults were not immunized. So if you have diabetes, chronic liver disease, another hepatitis virus, it's important to protect yourself against hepatitis B as well.
How can I keep track of my vaccinations?
In Tennessee, we have the database called Tennis to keep up with our children's vaccines. But for adults, we don't have that standardly in place yet. They're working on it for late 2017 to hopefully have a database for adults where your provider could look up what you've had and what you haven't had. But for now, it is important just to keep a copy. If you get an immunization, either at your doctor's office, at the hospital, or at a pharmacy, to keep a copy of what you had and when.
Should I be afraid of getting vaccinated?
I think the main thing, or something I talk a lot with my patients about, is fear of vaccines. A lot of people are afraid to get their vaccines. They're afraid they're going to get a certain illness from their vaccine. In most cases, that's not possible. There are some very minor reactions you can have to different vaccines, like a little pain locally at the site of the shot, maybe a little fever for a day, maybe feel a little bit crummy and achy for a day, but overall, the risk of getting the actual infection greatly outweighs those couple little side effects that you might have. So we recommend to just don't be afraid of the vaccine. In most cases, reactions are minor and it's worth preventing the actual disease.
To find out if you're up to date on your vaccinations, go to the Adult Immunization Schedule page of the website of the Centers for Disease Control. Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.